Hey people. Um, so let me reset this. Um, this is one of the last videos that I'm going to be doing. I like this um, on my cell phone, except for maybe vlogs. Um, so hopefully, you know, you're okay with this. I have some big surprise coming up very shortly. But I wanted to talk about there was a comment on my Let's Talk About Consent video that I think is an important thing to state, which I don't think I stated in that video, but I do want to state now, which is consent when given can be revoked at any time, except for one thing, except for one point, and I will talk about that later on. And I've talked about this in the past, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. I'll talk about it a little bit later. When you are in a scene, or you are playing, or having sex, or whatever, you have to give consent to do that. But in that time period, when you're in the middle of it, if it's too much or too intense or whatever, just because you gave consent does not mean you can't revoke it. Does not mean you can't say, I'm done. This is why we in the kink community, the BDSM community, use safe words. Because we want to make it absolutely clear that we are done with this scene. Okay? Words like no, don't, and stop necessarily don't work. Okay? We have a pretty much standard safe word, which is red. Because if the words like no, don't, and stop could be part of the play, they could be part of the scene. You could have a scene where intentionally, you are making it very clear that this is a scene where it's gonna get rough, it's gonna get violent, it's going to be super intense, and you want to make it very clear that these particular words, if you say them, don't necessarily mean stop. Now, if you haven't made that clear, you haven't made it clear that no, don't, and stop don't mean that. If you mean, if you're saying, if you say no and don't and stop, and those three particular words, or any other variation of those mean stop, then that's what it means. That means you said those words, consent is now revoked. Anything you do from that point forward is now considered assault. And depending on what you're doing, could be considered sexual assault. Okay? But you have to make those things clear up front. This is why having the conversation about what is okay and what is not okay is vital when you're going to do a scene. You know, even I've had times where didn't talk about things like condom use, and I was in the middle of the scene, and before I just plunged in without knowing whether I was supposed to use a condom or not, I would stop, ask, and then proceed. Okay, because if I don't know, didn't necessarily know what the person wanted, yes or no on that particular thing before I should have asked, but I didn't. But even asking in the middle of the scene is okay, but it's not optimal. As long as you are aware of the situation, then you talk to the person to the person while you're in the middle of it. That's fine, but also keep in mind they have the right, and you have the right to stop the scene at any time. Okay, if and also and if you want to stop it, talk for a little bit and restart it, that's fine too. The only time that this isn't true is if you're doing what's called a rack scene, a risk aware kink. Um, uh, yeah, and I know that people out there will scream and yell at me for saying it that way, but the idea is like, and I've stated this. There's two basic forms of play within BDSM. There's a lot of other variations, but these are the two primary, which is SSE, safe, sane, and consensual, and rack. And these two types, the best way to describe them is one is a train, one is a roller coaster. Okay, with SSC, you have the right to pull the ripcord, pull the cord, and the train will stop. With with rack, you get on the ride and you are on the ride until it's done. Okay, safe words aren't really a necessity. You've just agreed to, yes, I am willing to do this. Just like when you get into, a car on a roller coaster and you put the bar down, the second that thing starts moving forward, you're on it until it pulls back into the station. Now, keeping all of this in mind, if you are aware of all these things and you are comfortable with these ideas, then there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, and all the other variations out there. There are tons and tons of variations of these consensual models, but these are the two primary models. The vast, vast, vast majority will always be SSC. Okay, but the one thing also you have to keep in mind is after the scene is over, you just because you might regret the scene does not mean somebody took advantage of you. You agreed to it. You agreed to do the scene. You cannot do what is called, and I haven't heard it very much recently, but it was something when I first started this channel was in the air, and I made a video saying nope, and that's post scene consent removal. Okay, just because you regret it does not mean that they took advantage of you, does not mean they raped you, does not mean any of that. You agreed to it. You made a decision. You agreed, you consented. At the end, if you didn't, if you didn't like it, that's your issue. You have to deal with it. So, as long as you keep all of these things in mind, have fun. Do what you feel like. Okay? Yes, you can stop a scene at any time, but just because you've stopped the scene does not mean the person is taking advantage of you. It just might have gotten too intense and gone a little too far. That's perfectly fine and legitimate reason for you to stop a scene. If they don't stop the scene at that point, you have a perfectly legal right to call, assault or rape. Okay? It's that simple. Okay, if they start going outside of the boundaries you have agreed to, that is assault or rape. It is that simple. Okay, not too complicated, but just keep that in mind. No talk. I mean, I've stated this, for a while now. I have 5 essentials for a good scene: conversation, negotiation, consent, safe words, and aftercare. If you have all 5 of these, your scene should go pretty smoothly. Because with the conversation, you are talking about what it is you want, what it is you don't want. Then you go move into the movement in the negotiation. Okay, you've talked about it. Now you're negotiating. How far can I go? How far do you want me to go? How far don't you want me to go? Where should I stop? Okay. Once you've had that negotiation, then you move into consent. Yes, everything that we've talked about in the negotiation, everything we've negotiated, I am agreeing to. And both parties need to do this. Okay? And then, like I said, in an SSC scene, which is the vast majority of the scenes, that's where a safe word comes in. Okay? Knowing at any time in that scene, you can call red. You can call your safe word, whatever it happens to be. Call it banana. I don't care. Okay? But make sure while you're doing the negotiation You have talked about it. You have talked about it, made it very clear for both you and the person. You both have the ability to stop the scene at any time. As a dominant in the scene, I can just stop at any point because I'm the top. I'm the one controlling the scene. Okay? But I always give that out to the bottom to be able to say, no, I've had enough, I'm done. And I've had scenes called on me, and I respect it, and I go right into the aftercare. Aftercare is important, whether it's simple sex or it's a hardcore heavy scene. The reality is you will need some aftercare because you are on this emotional high that I until you've experienced it, I can't explain it to you. I can try to explain it to you, but it's really impossible. But you need to have that time to just come down, come back down to reality, to be able to get back into the real world. Because when you are doing a scene and you're in the middle of great sex, you're in the middle of an amazing scene, you're in a tense scene, whatever, your mind moves into a different realm. And this is not something that we say willy nilly. This is something that's been backed up by research. Okay, this is something that's been backed up by, a scientific study. This is not just something we made up just to sound cool. No, this is something that has been proven through study to be an absolute real thing. Something we sit there and go, yeah, no shit. But it's been proven. So as long as you understand that and you can move into aftercare and take care of the person who is the bottom, and dominance, the tops need aftercare too. I need that time just cuddling with the person that I just played with to be able to bring myself out of that state of what I was doing back into the real world. Okay, so as long as you keep all of those things in mind, you're gonna have a good time. It's complicated, but at the same point, it's kind of simple. So, if you got any questions, anything, hit me up. That's it for now. Be well and safe.